Oh my gosh, you guys, it's over. We made it. You can buy GPUs again. Oh, hey, I'm TechDweeb. How's it going? Thanks for clicking on the video today. You know, we've been through a lot these past few years. You know what I'm talking about. The state of the world has really taken its toll. And the worst part isn't the piles of dead bodies or the destroyed lives of your innocent friends and neighbors. It's the fact that you and I can't get GPUs. The miners and scalpers have stolen our joy. It's because of them that we've been forced to game on integrated graphics or GPUs made out of cardboard and Skittles, or even worse, resorted to using GT 710s. But there is a glimmer of hope, and not just stopgap solutions like the T400 and the T600, which are great, but you need real GPUs. New GPUs with real RTX features like DLSS and ray tracing that can play all the modern games with decent settings and resolutions. And that's what we're celebrating today, because the GPU shortage is officially over. Yay! Oh my god, it's over, you guys! We did it! Why do I declare it's over, you ask? Well, you might have noticed that things have been changing slowly. Prices have been coming down and more stock has been available on sites like Newegg. Well, I went into a computer store here in Canada a few days ago. It's a store called Canada Computers, and I had to make the perilous trek through blizzards and ice storms to get there. And when I got there, do you know what I saw? Can you guess? That's right. I saw a homeless man without pants playing hockey with a raccoon outside the store. And then you know what I saw inside the store? GPUs. It was the first time in the last 2 years that I was in a store and they had GPUs in stock. Not GT 710s, not even GT 1030s, but real GPUs. They had a bunch of 1650s and 1660s at reasonable prices, and they had a few RTX GPUs. They had a couple RTX 2060s, a 3070 Ti, a 3080, and they had this brand new RTX 3050. And that's why we're here today. We're here to check out this RTX 3050. This is the Zotac Twin Edge RTX 3050 OC. It has 2,560 CUDA cores, 8GB of GDDR6 VRAM, and a 128-bit memory bus, 1,807 MHz boost clock, 14 gigabits per second memory clock, PCIe 4.0 8X, and this version comes factory overclocked. I really wanted this particular model of the card. There are others available and some of them are cheaper, but this is the one for me. Zotac has a reputation of being cheap and kinda crappy, but for me it's the opposite. Every single Zotac product I've owned has performed above my expectations. Without going into detail, their customer service has been amazing for me, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I think this is the best looking RTX 3050 that you can find. It's small and minimalist, it's sleek and futuristic looking. I love the weird angles. It looks like something from City 17 or some piece of alien technology. I'm doing an entire PC build based on the look of this card. I'll be making a video of that soon, so get subscribed so you don't miss it. This cost me $410. And not ideal, like I said, but compared to the price to performance we've been getting over the past year or two with the new GPUs, I'm happy with this. So, should you spend $400-ish on an RTX 3050? What kind of performance can you expect? Well, let's answer that today, shall we? Today I'm testing this 3050 in my rig that has a Ryzen 7 5800X and an X570 motherboard, 32GB of DDR4 RAM running at 3600 MHz, a PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD. I built this PC in another video, I'll link to that in the description below, but the star of this video is the 3050. So, without further delay, let's play some games. Starting off, we're playing The Witcher 3. Oh my god, look at the FPS in the menu. It's like 2000 FPS. That's awesome. This game came out a few years ago in 2015, but it's still a great looking game, and it's one of my all-time favorites. I actually just started a New Game Plus playthrough of the game, so I'm planning on playing through it again. I loved it so much. Witcher 3 doesn't have DLSS or FSR or anything like that, so we can only adjust the resolution and the settings. Running at 1080p, we're able to crank the settings all the way up to Ultra, and we're gonna get a solid 73 FPS. That's freaking awesome for Ultra settings. This compares to the performance you get from like a 1660 Ti or a 5600 XT, but the benefit here is that this is a RTX card, which won't help us out in Witcher 3, but it will definitely be valuable in other modern games. I gotta stick to 1080p for all the games I do in today's test, but because I think this is a 1080p beast of a card, but it would suffer a bit when making the jump to 1440p. But I'll show you this first game in 1440p so you can see the performance difference. Going up to 1440p with the same settings, we're gonna go down to an average of 49 FPS. That's a 32% drop from our 1080p performance. So if you're gonna run at 1440p, you'll need to accept that you'll need to sacrifice some FPS or lower the settings a bit. This isn't a monster of a GPU at 1440p, but it's certainly capable with some sacrifices. 1440p is significantly a more demanding resolution than 1080p, but we do have 8GB of VRAM in this GPU that can help us keep the textures on maximum without a performance loss, even if you have to lower the other settings. Most modern games look nearly just as good with medium settings as they do with ultra anyways, especially when you can keep the textures cranked up. Even at 1440p, this card does an amazing job here in The Witcher 3. Let's move on to something a bit more demanding. This is Shadow the Tomb Raider, which came out in 2018, running at 1080p with ultra settings and looking very good indeed. We're gonna average 74 FPS. When this game came out, it was a real graphical showcase game. Kinda crazy that a 50 class GPU is running this game at 74 FPS. That's without ray tracing, by the way, which is my preferred way to play. Not just because of the FPS, but also the way the game looks. I made a video about that topic. There's a link to that in the description below. I prefer to keep RTX off in most games, but let's see what happens when we enable it here, just for fun. We're gonna turn on ray traced shadows to medium, and we're gonna go down to 46 FPS. That's a pretty big performance hit, but at least we're still at a playable FPS. But we have one trick up our sleeve, DLSS. We're gonna turn DLSS on to balanced, and we go right back up to 74 FPS. A balanced DLSS looks just fine, in my opinion. I'd rather play without ray tracing at a native 1080p than play with DLSS and ray tracing, but as a way to compensate for the ray tracing performance penalty, DLSS is a perfectly acceptable way to gain back some of that performance without too much of a sacrifice in visual quality, and that's the best part about these RTX GPUs. You get great performance without ray tracing. You can take a performance hit if you really want ray tracing, and there's a chance it'll still be playable. And you can use DLSS to get a boost in performance with ray tracing. Or you could use DLSS without ray tracing to get some crazy FPS. Look here, with performance DLSS, we go up to 103 FPS. That's awesome. Here's a newer game that came out in 2021, Resident Evil Village. It's an amazing looking game and it has RTX features. I'm not gonna go back and forth between RTX and DLSS or FSR on and off for every game, so I'm just gonna choose the settings that I would personally play with, aiming for playable and enjoyable FPS in most titles. Adjusting the settings and toggling ray tracing or DLSS to get the perfect balance between the games looking great and running great. Here in Resident Evil Village, I went with high settings, ray tracing set to medium. And this game doesn't have DLSS, but it does have FSR, which we have set to ultra quality, and we're gonna average 57 FPS. This game looks incredible. And this is one game that I would personally play with RTX on, even if I had to sacrifice some settings. The game engine is just so crazy real looking. It's got this photorealistic rendering style that looks way better than lots of games that perform like this. And it's a creepy, spooky game too, so that extra realism really helps with immersion. I hate scary games, but I don't hate this one, even though it is scary. I don't play this one alone at night. Moving along to Red Dead 2, we're gonna use the console equivalent settings provided by Digital Foundry, which is a mix of medium and high mostly, 1080p, and we're making use of that sweet DLSS, which we have set to quality. We're gonna average 90 FPS. The DLSS doesn't affect the visuals to any significant degree. Yeah, you'll lose a tiny bit of definition in some areas, but it's barely noticeable when you have it set to quality or balance. And this is a third-person action game, and a game that has amazing visuals. So you can crank the settings way up if you don't mind sacrificing some FPS for visual fidelity. I personally like to play this with a medium-ish frame rate. I'd probably increase things a bit to get it around 60. I like going sightseeing in games like this. The game is just so gorgeous that it deserves to look as good as it can. I love spending time in this world. It's just so peaceful and relaxing riding through the forests and across the prairies with the beautiful graphics and scenery passing me by.
Go on. This ends now.
Here's Valorant, running at 1080p with the highest settings. You know, I heard this game is super well optimized, and I think the FPS agree with this. I got 401 FPS average. 401. And the game looks good too. I wish more developers put performance first the way these guys do. I think if you set out to make a well-performing game, you'll find ways to make it look good without tanking the frame rate. There's no need for simple-looking games to need beefcake GPUs. This game will run on anything, apparently. Oh, and this is my first time playing this game, by the way. I jumped into a deathmatch and I tried my best. I got a few kills. I wasn't the worst in the match, but I certainly wasn't anywhere near the best. Actually, I saw people with rifles and SMGs, and I didn't know how to get them. So I actually had to Google it after the match, and I realized I had to press B to buy guns. So I did another match and actually bought some guns, and I did a bit better. Actually, in the second match, we had a different average FPS. The average went down to 341. Still amazing, obviously, but I guess there's some variation in the game. Probably the detail on the maps or something. I had a really fun time playing this. I don't play competitive shooters often, but I always have tons of fun when I do. Gets your blood pumping, you know what I mean, bro? Need to give me some energy drinks or something.
Eliminate.
On to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, a really, really nice looking game. One of the best looking games of this generation, in my opinion. I love the way this game looks. We're running at 1080p with very high settings, pretty much everything set to max I think, and we're averaging 55 FPS. This is another one of those games that I prefer to crank the settings up even if we have to sacrifice FPS. The game looks so good. I play this with a controller on my living room PC, and I play with a mouse and keyboard on my desktop, and I prefer to play with higher FPS on my desktop because it feels much better with mouse and keyboard. But when I use a controller, I don't mind taking an FPS hit because I don't really notice it as long as I'm over 50-ish FPS. This game looks great with high settings. No need to go up to very high settings unless you're in the mood to appreciate the beautiful English landscapes and countryside while you Vikings smash some innocent woodland creatures. I installed this just to test it for you guys because I get requests for this game all the time. Here's another esports style game, the OG esports game, actually, CSGO. I was a big Counter-Strike fan back in the day. I played the junk out of Counter-Strike 1.6 back in high school. I think I mentioned this place on the channel before, but there was an internet cafe in Toronto called the Grey Region, and my friend and I would head downtown Toronto on Friday nights to spend all dang night playing Counter-Strike and Team Fortress Classic. I was never really good at the game, to be honest, but I liked it. I played CSGO when it was first released back in 2012, but I stopped playing competitive shooters entirely for the last 10 or so years. This is my first time playing CSGO in a very long time, so I'm out of practice, and I suck even worse than I did back in the day, but I still had fun. I found myself in a bot match, but there was a few other humans in there. I didn't do as bad as I thought I would. Oh, I guess I should talk about the performance, eh? We're running at 1080p with the highest settings, and we're gonna get 250 FPS average. And you can lower those settings to get some crazy high FPS, of course. If you have like a 240 hertz monitor or something, this 3050 will be more than enough to let you take advantage of that. But can it run Crysis? Crysis was always ridiculously hard to run when it was first released, and for years it brought even the beefiest systems to their knees. This is the remastered version, which feels just as demanding today as the original was back in the day. You need some serious hardware to run it at max settings. I was surprised to see how well this performed here on the RTX 3050. This remastered version has support for ray tracing and DLSS. We're running at 1080p with high settings, DLSS set to quality, and ray tracing set to high, if you can believe that, and we average 70 FPS. That's not bad, considering that we're running with ray tracing on high. The original looked great, and the remastered looks outstanding. I love Crysis. I got this remastered version at the last Steam sale just to add to my test suite, but I'm definitely going to play through the entire game. I wish they had Crysis Warhead as part of this. That was a great one too.
Units headed your way.
Next up, we're gonna play God of War. Yeah, we're gonna smash some jerks in the face with my frosty axe. For this run, I went with 1080p, high settings, and balanced DLSS. And we're averaging 88 FPS. That's really awesome, considering how good this game looks. If you're playing on a 60Hz monitor, you can probably go with quality DLSS and or some maxed out settings to get the most out of it. But the fact that we could get over 80 FPS with rather high settings in a brand new game that was just released tells me that this 3050 is going to be a really solid performer for years to come. With 8GB of VRAM, it shouldn't crumble under the weight of new games with huge texture libraries the way some older cards will, like the 6GB 2060 or the 4GB RX 6500 XT. Oh man, that card. Yeah, I'd love to get a 6500 XT to test on my channel, but I just can't bring myself to pay any substantial amount of money for it. Maybe someday I'll find one on the cheap, but by that point it'll have lost all relevancy, so whatever. I'll probably never get around to trying it. This 3050 is the best choice if you're looking for something low to mid tier that will handle 1080p gaming for the years to come. Of course, we need to try Fortnite. For the kids and the dweebs among us, we're going with 1080p at epic settings with ray tracing off and performance DLSS. And I got an average FPS of 110. This is a competitive game, so I think most people want to play with a very high FPS so they can get the most podes on the noobs and stuff. Me, I actually like the way this game looks. And I think it looks pretty ugly when you run it at really low settings. So I like to turn up the graphics so that it plays at the native refresh rate of my monitor, which is 100 Hz, but make it still look good. And we don't have to sacrifice much here since we're running at epic settings. Yeah, I didn't bother with ray tracing, but I had a feeling it would hurt our FPS too much. I might do a dedicated video on ray tracing performance of various games on this card, if that's something you'd want to see. Let me know in the comments if you'd find that useful or entertaining to watch. Oh, and watch this kill. I had a good laugh at this one. This is Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition. The original was amazing looking, and you could turn on ray tracing or leave it off. It was your choice. But this Enhanced Edition has a completely redone lighting engine that's completely based on ray tracing. You literally can't play this game if you don't have a card that supports ray tracing. It's basically an RTX showcase game because it puts ray traced lighting and reflections at the forefront. I really didn't know what to expect going into this, so I just went wild and selected ultra quality settings and I put ray tracing up to high. But I went in with balanced DLSS to balance things out a bit, and I was kind of shocked that we ended up with 57 FPS. So don't let anyone tell you that the RTX 3050 isn't for ray tracing. In every test that I've done, ray tracing has exceeded my expectations. Obviously, DLSS is a big help. We certainly wouldn't be getting nearly these FPS if we didn't have DLSS to give us that boost. But that's why RTX is great. Not only do you have ray tracing, you get the DLSS to back it up. Pretty much every game that has ray tracing has DLSS baked into the game. And the best part of all that is that it gives us options. We can make our own choice about how good to make the game look versus how well it's going to perform. The 3050 can handle everything I've thrown at it, and the performance we're getting for this price is really good, in my opinion.
What do we hear?
He's an intruder too, so he must die before he brings the others.
Enough! The forest court comes first. The court will decide if we kill him.
GTA 5. You knew this was coming. This game is our standard candle. No good benchmark video would be complete without it. Gonna run at 1080p with the highest settings. And the average I got was 89 FPS. This game is older now, but it's still so relevant because of how good it is, how well optimized it is, and it still has a very big online community. I still love firing up this game to cause some mayhem or play through some of the awesome story missions, or just get into some fistfights with random pedestrians. I saved the best for last. Well, not the best as in like the best game. It's a good game, but it's not the best game. But it is the best game to test this card on. Cyberpunk 2077. This is running on the new 1.5 patch, which fixed a bunch of bugs with the game and improved performance. It also added FSR support. I'm running an NVIDIA RTX card here, so I'm obviously going to go with DLSS over FSR. But it's amazing that they added FSR support for older GPUs or newer AMD GPUs. For this test, I went with 1080p, high settings, and I actually turned on ray tracing set to medium because I wanted to see how well the 3050 could handle this game. DLSS set to performance, and I got an average of 57 FPS. That's good, considering how demanding this game is, especially with ray tracing. Yeah, performance DLSS takes a bit of the quality away, but the DLSS implementation in this game is very well done, so you're not sacrificing much. This is Cyberpunk after all. Sometimes it seems like it's made to melt your GPU. The 3050 isn't a beast, but it can handle this game with some pretty good settings, which is saying a lot. I've been playing this game more and enjoying the actual game as well. I'm planning on playing every night this week to progress the story, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of what Night City has to offer. I'm calling it now. This is the new GPU for the people. I've always had a soft spot for 50 class GPUs. The 1050 and the 1050 Ti were amazing GPUs for their price, and they're still going strong today. The 1650 was the go-to best bang for the buck GPU until the scalpocalypse hit, and it's my prediction that the RTX 3050 will take the bang for the buck crown. Yay! It's the bare minimum GPU that you can buy to get RTX features. You can use this to play modern games at higher settings along with DLSS, or older games at super high resolutions with amazing FPS, or even enable ray tracing along with some more aggressive DLSS if you want to dip your toes in the ray tracing pod. And I'll make another prediction, they'll get cheaper in the months to come. The first step is that they're in stock at slightly inflated prices, which is the step that we're in. The next step is that the inventory increases and supply and demand equalizes, and then they'll be sold at reasonable prices, and then eventually we'll be able to find them at a discount, like the good old days, back in like 2018 or whatever. What do you guys think? Have you seen positive signs that the GPU shortage is starting to improve? What do you think of the 3050? I'm pretty impressed with the performance, but I want to know your thoughts. Is this GPU appealing? Let me know what you think in the comments. And while you're down there, click the thumbs up button if you like the video, or the thumbs down button if you didn't like it for some reason. Subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. I'm Tech Dweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.